Let's just try it for like 5 seconds right now.
1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, boom. Why did you stop, asshole? Oh, because you can't stop laughing. You're a dick.
Oh, wait, hold on. I've got a kazoo. Let's see if you can do the acapella of the thing, and I'll try to do it through a kazoo.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Can't do that. It's too hilarious.
Okay, so what you're saying is that maybe real instruments might be better.
Deck the halls with rotting entrails.
I'd rather not.
I am so stoked for this party. Halloween marathon, booze, trick-or-treaters, the traumatized. This is going to be great.
I'm sorry none of your eccentric circus friends can make it, Corey.
That's okay. They're wanted for armed robbery on 3 continents.
Don't worry, though. I sent out some invitations to a few other mutual acquaintances, and...
Maddy, we don't have any mutual friends.
Oh, that must be them.
Wait, before you answer that door to reveal a very obvious twist, we need to start the podcast.
Right. Hi, I'm Maddy.
And I'm Corey. And this is Hallow-Holics
Anonymous,
a show about all things horror and occasionally Halloween. Actually, a lot of Halloween.
Yeah, mostly, actually, especially this one. It's all Halloween, all month.
It's October.
Yes. And with the new Halloween movie coming out, we figured we'd analyze all the Halloween movies. And unlike my earlier episodes with Friday the 13th, we're going to finish it.
We're going to skip the Rob Zombie movies. There will be no Rob Zombie Halloweens here.
Not at all.
That's a slight point of contention between me and Maddy because I like one and hate two, but she hates both. But we will be doing, I assume, a spoiler-free thing about the new one?
About the new one, yes. We're not going to be spoiler-free at all about the old ones.
Oh, no. We're going to spoil the shit out of those guys.
Guys, you've had plenty of time to catch up, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure. And most of them are really bad, so I don't care.
Well, I'm going to go answer the door. Oh, it's so bright in here. I'm just coming up from the basement down below, as you recall from just seeing me a moment ago. This is a purely audio format, so some people might not be aware of that.
Hi, Bunker Uncle. I'm really glad you're here at the party.
I've told you before, boy. Call me Sally.
I'm not going to do that.
Listen, a talking can of peaches told me that you could use some help up here with your appetizers, so I'm going to give you, and what I assume are your listeners, or the voices in your head, some recipes. And by recipes, I mean one recipe.
I'm very excited to hear what a crazy basement survivalist wants to cook. So go for it, dude.
First, you take yourself some hot dogs. And by hot dogs, I do not mean animals of the canine variety that have been het up in times of desperation. I mean the kind you buy in packages.
I'm pretty sure our listeners, at least most of them, I hope, understand that you're not talking about actual dog meat.
Well, first what you want to do is cut them in half, but not lengthwise. Sidewise. That's right across the middle, boy. You understand?
No. Like, you don't mean like...
You cut
like
them
an autopsy
half.
cut. You mean like just cut one hot dog into two?
Yeah, across the road,
Okay.
not down the street.
That's dark, but okay.
So then you want to slice up the ends like they got little tiny legs on both sides of each half. Does that make sense to you, boy?
It does.
Then you wrap up some biscuit dough you get from the Pillsbury packages, and you bake them. And then you put little ketchup spots on them, and you got yourself some spiders. Spiders you can eat for more than just the minimal protein you get from the ones climbing on them there webs.
Actually, depending on the spider, I don't think the protein's so minimal there, Bunker Uncle.
Oh, hey, I'm back. Did I miss anything?
No, you didn't. Who was at the door? Just me, your wonderful and memorable teacher from that one school episode.
And me too.
Oh, dear God.
The gang's all here, and just in time.
For...
The reading of my die-hard Halloween crossover erotic fan fiction, of course.
Or here's an idea.
On this day in horror history.
Grayson Hall, who played Dr. Julia Hoffman in Dark Shadows, was born in 1923.
That was this day in horror history. Jim, I can't help but notice you and I have we have a very similar cadence to our voice. Yeah, I know, and I don't know where that comes from. We're obviously two different people. I'm just a lone trucker driving down the highway, looking for my friend Corey in all the nooks and crannies down in his town. To be honest, Jim, that makes me a little bit uncomfortable because it's not really how I roll. I mean, I punish people like you, I'm fine with that, but actually listening to you is very creepy for me. Well, I don't know what to say. I'm just a man living a trucker's life. Driving down the road, looking for Corey, not wearing pants.
All right, that's enough, guys. We're going to go ahead and start with Maddy's movie. How does that guy know it's a classic already if this is the trailer for the movie?
A small American town.
Well, that's a good question.
Years ago.
I don't know.
Maybe he's referring to the holiday.
Maybe. Tiny Michael Myers.
Those are the
I have a lot to
worst.
say about the scene after this, but we'll wait until...
Those are the worst eye holes.
They really are. Like, this is literally just sticking a mask in front of the camera.
Halloween. 8 years trying to read him. And then another 7 to keep him locked up.
Man, Donald Pleasance is amazing.
Yeah, a lot less British in this one, though. He gets more British as the series goes on.
I admire Michael's presentation. He does some decent setup.
Yeah. For a dude who's been locked up in a room for 17 years, I think it... No, it was... He was 6 when he did those murders. 15 years.
Maybe the real... Yeah,
for a dude for 15 years.
maybe the real reason Loomis couldn't get through to him was because he was an art major.
It could be. What I don't
For 8 years, I tried to convince him there was no career in that field.
So now you're kind of getting into the Rob Zombie version, though, with the art.
Well, artists are dead inside. This trailer is the whole movie.
Halloween. The night he came home.
Thing we're going to touch upon later about Lindsay, too.
All right, so that was the trailer to Halloween. If you couldn't tell. An unbalanced killer breaks out of his longtime psychiatrist's custody and terrorizes a young woman and her friends on Halloween night. It's just that simple.
Loomis didn't have him in custody at that moment. Loomis was going to tell them not to let him out, and he escaped. Because everybody keeps trying to blame Loomis, poor Loomis, for letting this dude out, and Loomis wasn't even at the hospital at the time. He was going to try to stop it.
Oh, that is true. But now you know the original working title of this film.
The Boogeyman? I don't know.
No, The Babysitter Murders. And
I think I did know that at one point.
Yeah, and a year later, after this film was released, we got the perfect film to personify that concept, When a Stranger Calls, which I've already heard you would absolutely adore.
Oh, I do. Actually, I really do like it, but it messed me up. Not really in the way that I was completely surprised that those kids got killed in the beginning. Mm-hmm. It was more the fact that have you checked the children? I couldn't stop saying that for a month.
My dad was a young teenager when that movie came out, and I think my grandparents had gone to see it, and then a friend of his decided to screw with them and called them and said, "Have you checked the children?" in a creepy voice, and freaked the hell out of my grandmother.
Oh, I'm sure, man. That movie taps into some serious parental fears.
Mm-hmm. But this is about Halloween. One of the big three. You know what the big three are, right?
Are we talking Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees?
Yep. And I think of them all, this one is the most tasteful, the classiest. Disregard part 3 and future sequels. We're just focusing on part 1 here. If we compare Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Halloween, the one with the most style, class, and simplicity is Halloween.
I agree, and I actually don't think you can really lump this first one. I see why the rest of them get lumped in, and why this whole thing was... why the big three is the big three. But this isn't a slasher movie. This is a stalker film for the most part. There's only 4 murders technically?
Yeah, but it's kind of a standard rule that the first in any slasher series now is less of a body count and more plot.
True. But even so, this was really to me, Friday the 13th got with the killing. So did Nightmare on Elm Street. There's really not a whole lot of death in Halloween until the last act.
Yeah, but slashers hadn't even been established really as a genre yet.
True, I think you're right, but I think 2 is the first one we can actually call a traditional slasher film. But I'm ahead of myself.
Yeah. Now, there were some mixed reviews about this when it came out. They were generally positive. But I would actually like to read a couple for you. First is a review by Roger Ebert. We see movies for a lot of reasons. Sometimes we want to be amused. Sometimes we want to escape. Sometimes we want to laugh or cry or see sunsets. And sometimes we want to be scared. I'd like to be clear about this. If you don't want to have a really terrifying experience, don't see Halloween.
It was a pretty good review.
Yeah. Was the impression good?
It was middling.
Middling?
Yeah.
Listen, I worked really hard on my Roger Ebert. Just for that, I'm going to have you read Gary Arnold, and I have no idea what he sounds like, but you can come up with some kind of voice.
All right, I'm just going to make him a pompous dude.
He is pretty pompous if you read this.
Okay. Carpenter lacks the stylistic flair and psychological penetration that have allowed De Palma and George Romero to contribute new classics to the horror in recent years. Carpenter's scenario isn't rooted in anything except old movies, and it develops too arbitrary to establish roots even in that shallow ground. God, what a dick.
Yeah. Listen, I adore some of Romero's classics, especially the original Night of the Living Dead, which was featured on the television in Halloween 2, but we'll get to that later. And De Palma's Carrie is nearly transcendent in how it makes you root for the destruction of an entire graduating class. But there is no comparison with Carpenter's lexicon in the present day. He's the best. He truly is the best. And it's so unfair to cast that kind of judgment on a young director.
Yeah, this was a super early film. I actually didn't know it was so early for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was 30.
He's got Assault on Precinct 13.
At any rate, that guy clearly had no idea what he was talking about, as we have learned with the passage of time and the price of the Blu-ray collection I had to buy for this episode.
Right. I still need to buy that. I might go pick it up this weekend.
Now, it seems as if Carpenter was just a little influenced by Black Christmas and Giallo, yet severely dialing back the imagery of blood in this first film and only giving quick, short takes of nudity, creating something altogether different. It's a work of art. And there really, if you pay attention to it, there is not a lot of blood in this movie at all.
Oh, no. Like, that's what I'm saying. This is all about the stalking. This is all about seeing Michael. This was a little confusing for me, too, because this movie, and I'm going to get to this later, but this isn't really the movie that defines Michael Myers for me, oddly enough. This is definitely like, I mean, you've got Laurie Strode seeing him behind the bushes, out of windows. Tommy sees him here and there, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's all more of a stalker thing.
I would like to say, though, not just the actors who portrayed Michael, including Nick Castle, who co-wrote Escape from New York, Tommy Lee Wallace, the production designer, and Tony Moran for the unmasking, but the best performance in this movie, and I'm not even referring to Donald Pleasance, it's Jamie Lee Curtis.
For sure.
She's unbelievably subtle, and she was only like 19. If you really just zone in on her behavior in particular, she's absolutely perfect and believable. I have so much respect for her as a professional. This woman is one of very few icons who uses her fame to support charities for children's hospitals. She embraces her badassery for good in the best way possible, has aged so gracefully, but that has nothing to do with this movie. I just felt like I could shoehorn that in.
No, you totally should have. And she was also the only good thing about that crappy Scream Queens show.
Ugh, don't even get me started on that abysmal, somehow popular series that if you ever dare to tell anyone who liked it that it was crap, they would just throw their shoes at you.
Did anybody actually like that? Because it only ran for 2 seasons before it was canceled.
I knew a few people who liked it. They thought it was brilliant. It's the same kind of people who would like Family Guy.
Oh, okay. Carrie Fisher's daughter got sucked into the last season of American Horror Story after it canceled, which so far I'm okay with. I just started it. But I'm getting us off track. I'm sorry.
If you pay attention to it, it's not even really in her dialogue that she shows her acting chops. And if I was teaching a film acting class, I would probably use examples from this film to show you how much a person can act through gestures alone and facial expressions, because she doesn't over-deliver. There's a moment where, for instance, she's in class and she's just looking out the window and she thinks she sees something, looks away and looks back, but she doesn't overreact. She just looks mildly concerned for just an instant, and it's so perfect.
She also does this great thing throughout the movie occasionally. Like, she talks to herself a lot, but it's not really, she's talking to herself like she's a man or a father talking down to her. Did you notice the couple times she calls herself kid? And like, I don't know. It was really interesting to me that could have been cheesy. That could have been just this ridiculous, like, bit of overacting on her part. But even those moments were just played perfectly.
Yeah, I didn't even really notice her talking down to herself so much.
I noticed it for sure twice, but it probably happened some more. But yeah, it's almost like she's a noir detective talking to herself. It's very strange, but it works.
Beyond just Jamie Lee Curtis, who actually bought her own wardrobe with about $100, she just went to JCPenney's and bought a bunch of stuff that looked like a mom would buy for her teenage daughter. This film had a relatively small but dedicated cast and crew who put incredible care into the production. Sometimes the shots are a little unsteady, but it comes off as intentional. And it only took 20 days to shoot this film.
Yeah, 20 days, $300,000 if I remember.
And the score, it took John Carpenter 3 days to come up with the film score.
See, that's what it's all about. That is a good score. Simple and quick.
Exactly. What's interesting is that this was filmed in April, and it was very hard to find pumpkins at that time of year, I'm sure, as you can imagine, especially in California where they were. And if you pay attention, you can actually see a couple of hidden palm trees.
Yeah, that's another little problem I had. Like, when they were doing the high school scenes, all those outdoor lockers, no one from the Midwest to the East Coast does outdoor lockers in their high school. That is specifically a California thing. And maybe, I don't know, maybe you have them because it's fairly warm in your area, but, Yeah, there's no way Illinois in the fall there are no outdoor lockers. Like your school is inside because it gets cold.
I don't really remember because I never bothered to use my locker.
Were you one of those nerds who carried their giant full backpack to every class just to make sure you weren't late?
No, I just left all my junk at home and I'd be like, I forgot it.
Oh, okay. So you were just a shitty student.
Well, thanks.
No problem. Do you want to tell us about your high school transcripts now?
Just remember, kids, you don't need good grades to get into college.
Or high school in general. Drop out.
And when the bare minimum is an option, pick it every time.
Take it. Or no, better yet, if the bare minimum is option, do slightly better, then everybody will think you're great.
One of my favorite details about this movie, being that it was filmed in April when everything was green, is that first of all, none of the trees are brown. They're all like evergreens almost. But there's a point when she's coming out towards the very, very, very early evening before the sun is beginning to set. And suddenly you see all these brown leaves on the ground kind of fluttering around her. And only around her. They're not across the street. It's almost like evil is encroaching on her as the sun is beginning to set. And you see these leaves blowing. And actually, they were hand-painted by the art department for this film.
Oh, wow. Did they do it on purpose to sort of give that sense? Or were they only blowing around her because they could only afford that many leaves?
I'd like to believe that they did it for that purpose. I
could believe either one because both are really cool to me. Like I like happy mistakes and stuff like this.
It's hard to get a straight answer, I think, from John Carpenter because he's happy to act like everything he does is effortless and he's not really thinking about it. But the man is an artist, whether he'll acknowledge it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to believe he puts a lot more thought into his choices than he would lead us to believe.
Yeah, I don't know. There was this great piece in this documentary. I mean, this documentary focused on two, but I imagine it relates to his composing of the soundtrack in one as well. He went into a room. I mean, there's a lot less. I'm going to talk about this in two, but there's a lot less synth in. Well, it sounds a lot less synthy in.
It sounds more like this. I'm sorry, what?
That's more like two, but. It sounds a little more natural. Like there is synth in the first Halloween, obviously, but it sounds a little more natural. The lead line sounds more piano-ish. Anyway, my point is, when he worked with another composer on two, he went into the room and the guy was trying to be like, all right, here's how my setup works. Here's this, here's that. And Carpenter was like, I don't care. Don't care how it works. Let's just make the music. You're in charge of that. I'm going to make the music. So like, I think it's funny that he wants us to believe he's got this whole technical thing going on, but like I just love that he just didn't care about how it worked. He just wanted it to work.
Yeah, maybe he's just a natural genius artist, whatever.
Honestly, his soundtrack, I'm sorry I keep going back to his music, but it's John Carpenter. Like you have to talk about his scores because they're like half his movie and they're hits. Everything he's done, all of his, they're so simple and so perfect. Like he's the biggest influence. Like if you listen to our opening, it's kind of Carpenter meets
very much
like 80s B stuff. Like Carpenter meets Return of the Living Dead. And
Return of the Living Dead, definitely some influence there.
And everything I write is like that because he's just so amazing and so simple. And you can write that stuff with like a passing understanding of the equipment you're using. And he was the first guy to really do that. Like there's all these other guys, like all these pretentious synth dudes, like Brian Eno was doing weird stuff with like auto tape manipulation, but you've got Carpenter just doing this really simple stuff that evokes this visceral feeling in you. And I love that.
Mm-hmm. And there are other like kind of subtle hints that it's Halloween, but it doesn't go over the top like so many movies do. Like, don't get me wrong. I love Trick or Treat, but like it's a parody of how much they overdo the Halloween element. Or Hocus Pocus, where everyone's in costume and it's not even Halloween night yet, and everything's orange, and it's like there's a parade going down the street, and there's decorations on every house as if they don't know anybody who hates Halloween.
Right.
Which is completely unrealistic. But in this movie, you just see not really any decorated yards, but just like a small group of kids across the street walking out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what real Halloween looks like.
Yeah, and I like that too because it reminded me of when I was a kid, and and you see those early trick-or-treaters, they're either the ones that are most excited or they're the ones whose moms wouldn't let them stay out late.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many funny jump scares in this movie, too. And jump scares nowadays are especially cheap, but it's charming in this movie. Like, when she's walking and then she runs into the cop, and it's like, "Da!" with a sharp musical thing.
Yeah, I think I let a lot of the jump scares go in this one because it's an early iteration of jump scares. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't let them go in 2, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, and you know what? Going on to that topic, it's a lot of the approaches in this film are very simple, but it did basically help to form and shape the genre and cement some tropes that remain popular today, like the unkillable monster, the sequel in which you fight it with fire, the final girl, sex is bad and only innocent girls who wear tall stockings and long skirts will survive. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Mm-hmm. So much of that came from Halloween.
Yeah, people credit Friday the 13th for a lot of that stuff, but like the morality really does come from these old Carpenter ones.
Yeah, because in Friday the 13th, everybody was having sex. The only good girls who weren't having sex was because they didn't get the chance to do it yet.
Right.
Jamie Lee wasn't going to boink anyone. She was babysitting.
Right. She was ready to just hang out with his kid, eat popcorn, and watch The Thing.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, did you know that copy of The Thing they were watching for their movie marathon was actually part of John Carpenter's own video collection?
No, but that doesn't surprise me one bit.
Especially because
That's
he went
exactly
on,
what I would do.
Yeah, he went on to make the greatest remake of any film ever, and I don't care if that's an arguable statement to anyone. It's true.
It's not. Yeah. It's very true. And it's also one of the greatest H.P. Lovecraft adaptations ever. Mm-hmm. Fight me, Internet.
And if you haven't watched Halloween, this is the year to do it, my friends. But sit down, turn everything else off when you're watching it. You need to zone in to really appreciate this sort of silent, tense film. You can't talk.
This movie requires a big screen, total silence, mostly darkness.
Now, on the DVD, there's a little documentary about Jamie Lee Curtis and, like, her kind of rediscovering the fandom. And this charity event is called The Night She Came Home. And it's so damn cheesy. I just had to point that out. It's really, really cheesy, especially towards the end when they're playing this really effective, emotional music as she's touching, like, a painting or something on the wall that's just, like, a generic thing that's been thrown up in a hotel. But it's sweet. And it really does kind of push home how much you want to love a woman like Jamie Lee Curtis. And the commentary track I actually watched with this movie is incredibly charming. If you haven't watched it with commentary, you should. But first watch it without commentary if you haven't even watched Halloween. It's not immensely informative compared to something like Killer Clowns, which had a lot of technical details explained, and it, oddly enough, is one of the best commentary tracks I've ever heard.
It really is. It's one of the only ones I listen to beginning to end, too.
But this one's fun to listen to. It's mostly Jamie just telling John how hard it is for her to watch horror movies, how brilliant he is, and how scary every single moment of the film is, while you can almost picture him patting her on the hand and saying, "Okay, Jamie, okay."
Nice.
Yeah, they're clearly very fond of each other, and it's sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Also, let's get on to Donald Pleasance. He was amazing. Oh my God,
I love Donald Pleasance so much.
Oh my God. When he was looking down from that balcony and Michael was gone, that look, it speaks volumes. Acting.
See, if I have one problem with this movie, it's that there's not enough Loomis in it. Okay, 2 problems. There's not enough Loomis in it, and sometimes when Loomis is in it, I feel like because of what they're giving him, he's not playing to who he was. Loomis is this like man that is singly obsessed with dealing with this pure evil he sees that is Michael Myers. Mm-hmm. Everything, like he's constantly, this whole movie, all that he's doing is looking for Michael, trying to stop Michael. And then we get to the hardware store where Loomis is outside. Michael is across the street in the station wagon with the logo of the hospital that he was in, that the nurse drove. This is the I'm getting flustered. But yeah, this is the car that Michael stole from Loomis and the nurse. He's diagonal, like if Loomis just turned his head like 30 degrees, he'd see this station wagon, but he doesn't. And then the station wagon starts driving, and then it makes a left, drives right past him and he doesn't see it. This drives me crazy. My Loomis, the Loomis in my head canon, would have seen that. I feel like that was so out of character for Loomis. But that is honestly like that is me searching for a complaint about Donald Pleasance as Loomis, and that's not even his fault.
I'd like to say that Loomis is kind of like Captain Ahab. Michael is his white whale, except, he's not chasing after the monster for revenge or hubris, but because he's a psychotic murderer. Oh, okay, maybe he's not Captain Ahab. Here's a better one. Loomis is Sherlock and Michael is Moriarty if he was a mime. No, I guess that doesn't work either. Okay, Loomis is Loomis and Michael is Michael. They're iconic on their own. And whatever flaws you can find with whether you believe it was out of character or not for him to sort of let that detail go, I like to believe that maybe it hadn't quite hit home exactly what was happening yet.
Yeah, I think that could be it too, because again, there hadn't been any murders in Haddonfield yet. Like nobody even necessarily believed him yet. The sheriff was just kind of going along. He understood the importance of it, but like nobody had seen him yet. They just had a break in at the hardware store, that kind of thing.
And it's entirely possible that maybe Loomis had one moment of arrogance where he thought he understood Michael better than he really did.
Yeah, and I think that's what got Loomis in this situation, because he even says he was obsessed with Michael for so long, and he was obsessed with trying to fix Michael that he didn't see the evil in him. So Loomis did what a lot of doctors would do. They're like, I can heal the world. I can heal this man, but this man is barely a man. This man is evil incarnate,
It's one of the best elements of this movie. I know in reality, I wouldn't want a doctor who believed that anyone was not like completely without redemption, unless it was that annoying doctor in Shocker. But like the fact that even this very, very good doctor lets it go because he's seen evil. It's incredible.
And he's also like, Loomis is also a sociopath in his own right in his single-mindedness. You don't see it quite as much in one. And I'm sorry I keep bringing it up two before it's my turn.
He hasn't come completely unhinged yet.
No, but you see it more down the road a little bit because Loomis, like, that scene in 2 where that kid dies, he doesn't even care. He doesn't care he doesn't care about any of these people. He kind of cares about Lori, I guess.
Yeah. I'd like to think that he snapped the moment he looked down from that balcony. Yeah,
actually, that's a really good way to look at it. Yeah.
Going back to actually the budget for this film, which was actually $320,000. For comparison, that same year, the awful, awful, abominable creation that was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band had a budget of $13 million.
Oh, thank you for hating that. So many people don't. And those people are wrong.
Well, it's because it's because the songs are good. But that doesn't make a good movie. It doesn't. No, it's a terrible movie.
Yeah. Well, I don't want, this isn't a music podcast. I don't want to get into the Beatles, but I'm not a fan.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of the Beatles, but we can agree to disagree on that.
Yeah.
And this is crazy because I was trying to find a movie to compare to this just budget-wise that had come out this year. And I realized that 1978 was the same year that Grease, Superman, Midnight Express, Animal House, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Dawn of the Dead, and the best one of them all, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes was released, which had a budget of $90,000 if you were wondering.
Oh, wow.
What an amazing year.
Yeah.
We will probably not likely see such an incredible spate of such wonderful films for a very long time all at once.
Oh, we'll never see that again. Like, we get a few, it's not every year we get a witch or a ritual or, okay, this year was actually pretty good.
Well,
2017 was pretty good.
When you talk about ideas being used up, that doesn't mean that Romeo and Juliet's not a classic, even though by that time he was just copying Tristan and he's old.
Well, yeah. So, something that's always bothered me, like, I love the intro, right? I love that jack-o'-lantern, but I hate that have you noticed that little knife slash under his nose?
Like it's inexpertly
It's like they cut out the nose and then just went into the mouth to cut that out too. I don't know why, but that drives me crazy.
Oh, and
I really like these beginnings, but I'll get to the beginning that 2 is the best opening sequence to any Halloween movie, but we'll get to that.
I have no idea who carved that pumpkin, but it's a fun fact that's probably on some BuzzFeed list if anyone wants to.
Oh, I'm sure.
Tell us.
So Tiny Michael Myers witnesses some really embarrassingly fast sex. And it's kind of a theme in this movie. There's like at least everybody who has sex in this movie prematurely ejaculates, and I feel bad for everyone. So not only do these dudes die but they just don't get to be sexually fulfilled on their way out of this mortal coil, and I think that sucks.
I feel if they went premature that it was the women who weren't satisfied after they shuffled up this mortal coil, but
yeah, but I'm sure like now the guy has to die with like this like sense of shame and embarrassment. I just feel bad for everybody
involved. They looked pretty proud of themselves.
Yeah, but they were just they were pretending. Everybody was embarrassed. That scene right after that, when Michael goes outside and his parents are coming home, they stare at him for an unnaturally long period of time. And did you catch the look on the mom's face? Like, she's just over this kid.
She's like, what did you do now?
Yeah, and it's not even like a fear face. It's like, God damn it, kid.
I think
absolutely hilarious.
That was probably the one inexpert kind of shot in the whole film, because they basically freeze frame.
And it was so awkward. And it just kept pulling back and back and back. And it was still going. Oh, it just made me feel weird.
The dad could have leaned down and taken the knife or something. I mean,
the mom could have maybe hugged the kid or slapped him. I don't know. Anything.
Yeah, or just wailed on him, man. Just taking Michael out. Then we wouldn't have a movie, though.
Yeah. So I was super glad when Linda died, because her saying totally every other word drove me crazy. So there's a gross pedo joke in this movie that every time I watch it, it makes me weird. And I've got it right here. So Linda says, now when we get inside, Annie will distract Lindsay and will go upstairs to the first bedroom on the right. Got it? Bob says, first I rip your clothes off. Linda says, don't rip my blouse. It's expensive, you idiot. And then Bob says, then I rip my clothes off. Then I rip Lindsay's clothes off. Yeah, I think I got it. That is so gross to me. Like, so gross. That kid's 8. Like, it just didn't need to be there. I completely forgot that they showed Michael's face in this one, and he was just a dopey weirdo. He's just like I know that like 5 different people played Michael, and that was also why like I don't think they found Michael's character in this movie, because that
very rarely happens in the first film of any series.
But yeah, that's all I got for this one.
You know, some people actually found it very startling that he looked like just a normal guy.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It works. Like, dude was a normal guy at that point.
Frankly, I think one of the most, if you want to get down to it, I think one of the most disturbing killer reveals was in the house on Sorority Row. Clowns don't creep me out, but that costume is creepy.
I'll have to check it out. I feel like it's streaming somewhere.
Oh, it probably is. It's excellent, actually. There's so many, like, nods to Psycho. There's some really expert filming tricks in a surprising way that don't seem to make sense for a kind of cheesy tit flick from the early 80s.
Oh, right on.
So, Chuck, how was your weekend? You guys get up to anything interesting? Well, me and the missus, we took the kids out to the lake. We got on the boat for a little bit. I really enjoy fishing, but I can't seem to get little Jimmy into it, and I don't know what to do about it. He just wants to play his video games on the boat, and I don't really get to spend any quality time with him. It's kind of like my family's occasionally feels like they're falling apart. I don't know.
Hey guys, it's do you need any refills or anything? I don't know. You guys want some more drinks? Why did we invite them here?
They make really good dip.
Yeah, but you don't know what's in there. That's probably full of gremlin spit.
Are you sure it's not just guacamole? Because it looks like guacamole. I mean, it's bubbling a little, but...
So does their skin. This is probably just melted gremlin. You know they don't care if they kill each other.
Are you ready for me to turn your movie on?
Yeah, I'm sorry. They can get their own drinks. I'm ready to watch my child assault.
I shot him 6 times. I shot him in the
he has
heart.
lost it.
Man, he's not human.
Universal Pictures
This
presents
I'm going to talk about
Halloween
this.
2.
Who is it?
There was nothing within him, neither conscience nor reason, that wasn't even remotely human.
Oh, this is some kind of a joke. I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight.
I think this trailer is done a little bit more expertly.
Janet?
Way better pace.
Tell Mr. Garrett we're having trouble with the phones.
Her feet cut the trailer.
What's this? It's a Celtic word.
Halloween.
It's the Lord of the Dead.
It's a Celtic word.
We pronounce it, but I'm going to get to that.
Mr. Garrett?
Take that!
They really wasted Jamie Lee Curtis one. This is when Michael gets his sort of unstoppable force. This is... I'm going to say that.
He sure fights.
Halloween 2. More of the night he came home.
More of the night he came home. Remember that movie you watched 3 years ago? This is more of that.
I mean, that reminds me of a run-on gag I used to have with a friend of mine about a series of movies we'd come up with when he was hanging out. And the first one was The Guest That Wouldn't Leave. And then the next one, The Guest That Couldn't Take a Hint. Then the next one, The Guest Who Stayed Over, who overstayed his welcome. Then eventually, it got longer and longer and longer.
The jack-o'-lantern opening up to reveal that mummified head was super cool. I love it. I was so pumped going back into this movie when I saw that scene. I remember loving this movie when I was younger. I probably haven't seen it. I used to watch all the Halloweens every October up until probably my mid-20s.
Oh, wow. And now this is a new, restarting of the ritual.
Yeah, it really, that's where this idea popped in, because I'm like, I really should I should watch all the Halloweens. I watched all the Friday the 13th last year. I should do all the Halloweens again. And then light bulb went off. I'm like, hey, Maddy and I should do this.
I feel like one good subtitle for the film should be Halloween 2, Loomis Loses His Shit.
Yeah. And I'm going to get to that, too. I remember loving this movie. I watched it a lot, but I probably hadn't seen it since I was 25, 26.
Gosh, that was so long ago.
I know, but it had everything I wanted in a slasher movie. I liked this better than the original back then. It had great kills, what I thought were funny characters at the time. It really is the defining Michael Myers, and an absolute perfectly obsessed Loomis. This is quintessential Michael, quintessential Loomis to me. Mm-hmm. This is where those two really became their characters, even though Loomis got a little bit more British in this one. His accent started to show, and I don't know if that was a choice or if he just didn't give a shit.
You never get a little bit of a twang when you're upset?
Well, I'm not British.
Yeah, but maybe Dr. Loomis was British and he'd been in America for a long time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying it's a thing I noticed. So I'm not really going to summarize this movie. I'd rather talk about what I liked and what I didn't like, because I thought I liked everything. And then I went back and found out that everything I liked, I kind of didn't like. I want to talk about what worked and what didn't work. This movie has every ingredient that I want in a movie like this as a slasher fan. But for some reason, it just doesn't work for me, and I'd like to figure out why.
I wasn't really big on the reworked score.
Oh, you're going to hate a couple paragraphs from now then.
Oh, boy.
But like I said, I no longer love this movie, but I don't hate it, but it's not what I remember. And I'm wondering if maybe it's oversaturation, because I've seen so many movies that have really taken a lot from this. They've used a lot of the same tricks. I don't know, maybe I grew out of it, or maybe it just wasn't ever really as great as I thought.
I felt kind of the same way a few years ago when I rewatched all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, because that's kind of my series, and a few of them really, 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 really did not stand the test of time.
Yeah, some of them did and some of them didn't. I actually would like to give Nightmare on Elm Street the same treatment, and I have all those Blu-rays, so we can do that whenever.
Oh, I'd be happy to do it too. I have all of those DVDs.
My brain seems to do this thing where it gets too full of knowledge, and it kind of reboots and erases the old hard drive space to make room for more knowledge.
Name, where's his name? I threw
Exactly.
out the name!
I can't really pinpoint specific things about these movies, and I can't really pinpoint why I loved it and why I don't. But I really think it's the oversaturation thing. I think that the first two movies broke so much ground that it became cliche and it became really tropey. So you go back and watch it now after you've seen so many other movies do the cat jumping out of the trash, that kind of thing.
Well, this came out after part one was done with, there were and part one had inspired a bunch of slashers. Mm-hmm. So part two wasn't trying to compete with part one. It was trying to compete with all the other copycats.
I love that it takes off right where the original ends. That's always the most interesting thing to me. It's why I like the Walking Dead comic books, not the show, the comic books so much, because you never find out what happens to these characters. You know what I mean? They deal with this horrible thing, and then that's it. Happy ending, sad ending, horrible ending. You don't know what happens. This movie continues on. You kind of actually, granted, it's just the rest of the night, but you get to see into that a little further.
That's one reason I love Friday Night too.
Yeah.
It starts with him talking to his therapist.
Yeah, that's kind of Waxwork 2 is the same deal. It's got them in court. I think it's great. I can even tolerate the fact that he falls off a completely different balcony and leaves a cartoon indentation in the grass because I've always wanted to know what happens to these people after the credits roll. And for better or worse, in Halloween 2, you find out. But man, that depression in the grass was so cheesy, wasn't it?
I was okay with it.
So the soundtrack, which I was listening to as I was writing this, is for me.
Did you type to the rhythm of it?
Probably. But this soundtrack to me is next level Halloween soundtrack. This defines the rest of the soundtracks in the rest of the movies. They don't really go back to I don't want to say simpler because the soundtrack in 2 is still very simple, and it's even more synthy. It's pretty much 100% everything sounds synthy in this, even the piano lead.
Sort of like the evolution of the Doctor Who song. They don't reference the original, they reference some of the later reworkings.
Right. I think the original Doctor Who stuff was actually played on springs.
Was it?
I think. I need to research more, but it really sounds like that's percussion on springs.
It's so good.
It's really cool. Anyway, this is not a Doctor Who podcast. So. It can be sometimes if you want to, though.
I'm cool with that. I think there's a lot of horror tropes, and we could explore some of the darker stories in Doctor Who, but go on.
So Alan Howarth, the guy who adapted the original score, which is, of course, it's Carpenter. It's a great score. I love it. He played his new score over the original and worked with Carpenter on that. So the original score is still in there under all the newer synthesizer stuff. And to me, this really allowed the soundtrack to kind of retain its soul while bringing it to this new level. Not to mention, I'm a ridiculous sucker for anything analog and synthesized. Some purists may argue, some Halloween purists may argue like you, but to me, this is the best, most defining version of the soundtrack. And if I remember correctly, it's like I said, it sets the tone for the sequels.
Well, I didn't say it was terrible. I just prefer the original.
Yeah. Since we're doing all 8 of these, I will have plenty to say about the soundtrack because this is one of my all-time favorite soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people hate that this movie sort of went from a stalker picture to a slasher film, but I think the higher, gorier body count is great in this. I think the syringe in the eye, the air bubble to the temple, deep-fried naked nurse in a therapy hot tub were all great kills. Although that whole hot tub scene is kind of gross to me. Old, sick, dying, and injured people use that thing.
That's true.
That might be the last place in the world I would ever want to bone, and I'm not super picky when it comes to that kind of thing.
Well, the background behind it is a little dark, too, because Pamela Shoop didn't want to film nude, and she had some major emotional issues during the filming of that scene.
So Leo Rossi actually had she was really uncomfortable doing it. She didn't want to do it. But when you hear Leo tell the story, he talks about she was real uncomfortable, so I just got naked and got in the thing, and the thing was freezing. He talked about shriveling up and all this stuff. So him getting naked first and doing his thing supposedly made her feel comfortable enough to do it, and that's how that scene ended up working out.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have more problems with that scene. Like, a lot of it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, number one, like, you're boning in this vat of old people grossness, probably. Mm-hmm. And why would that thermostat go up that high?
Maybe if they were disinfecting it?
Maybe, or making, like, I don't know. I think that's what bleach is for. I doubt that they'd, like, boil it like that. I don't know, maybe. It's just weird to me, that whole part.
Well, I mean, you can set water heaters pretty hot to unreasonable levels, so...
But you still have some control over it on the other end. They didn't seem to have any control over it because they all went to that other room, you know? It was just... And by now, Michael Myers has been shot. He's had his eye gouged out. He was stabbed in the neck, as well as being covered in other people's viscera, right? Mm-hmm. Like, dude's all trash and disgusting. He would smell terrible. There's no way this guy would smell worse than the worst homeless man you've ever smelled in your entire life. Like, this dude would smell worse than me.
Well, I don't know about that, Corey.
Trust me, Bunker Uncle. Trust me. Like, he'd smell terrible. Karen would have totally noticed it right away. If some, like, crusty dude would be like, she would smell dead people and armpit. She still would have died. Don't get me wrong. But we could have at least gotten a quick, like, sniff and, like, a wrinkled face, being like, ugh, before she died, just to kind of illustrate that point.
I would just like to say that it's possible she had a deviated septum, and you're a little judgmental, sir, of people with no sense of smell.
Oh my God, you're reaching right now.
You have triggered me. I don't know if I can finish this show.
So far off into ether to find a way to argue with me about this. I also really love the way we're introduced to the hospital in this, because we get to watch this mother who's sort of concerned but not really walk her kid across the parking lot, who's got a razor blade stuck in his mouth. It's like between his teeth.
Oh my God, yeah.
In his lips. That still makes me wince to this day. Like, I can actually, it hurts my face to watch that scene.
Let that be a lesson to you kids. Don't eat apples.
Yeah. Like, I feel that, like, you know, that like when you cut yourself severely with like a razor blade or something, you get that sort of like icy pain. Mm-hmm. Like, I can feel that every time I see that kid. It's awful.
Oh, like the sort of nightmare where you're going down a slide and it slowly becomes a razor blade?
Oh, yeah. And then you fall into a river of alcohol.
Yeah. Or just like when you see a movie and they're messing with teeth or nails.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that dream, spit all your teeth in the sink too. I hate that dream.
Oh, I hate that too. And when you're carrying tiny babies that you keep losing.
I do that in real life. I'm not super worried about that.
Well, like pocket babies.
Oh, I have those too. Yeah, I have a little tiny baby sitting on one of my speakers right now. I haven't lost it though, because I'm a good father. Loomis is either getting more single-mindedly obsessed or he gets more screen time in this one, which I absolutely love. He was always my favorite character. He's equal parts Harbinger and Avenger in these movies. Donald Pleasance kills it in every single scene. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, when he just frantically repeats over and over again, I shot him 6 times! I shot him 6 times! You can feel his desperation. Uh-huh. It's absolutely perfect, even though he's a little more British.
Now, let this be a lesson to you kids. Do not drink and dress like a serial killer.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because even if I hadn't heard of Michael, that guy looked like a serial killer.
Mm-hmm. But that's the whole other thing. Like, even... he never fully believed that they got the right. He never fully believed that was Michael. Mm-hmm. And he never cared who that was.
Exactly.
He didn't think it was Michael. When he found out it wasn't Michael, he still didn't care because it wasn't Michael. That's the thing about Loomis. Like, he doesn't give a shit about anything but stopping this evil. Like, he's so, and this is the Ahab thing. He's so single-minded. He's just got this one goal that he's got, and he's just obsessed with it. And he proves that at the end, even though they kind of retconned it in later movies. But we'll talk about that another week.
Did you know Dana Carvey was an extra?
No.
Yeah, there's a point in the beginning where a news reporter's talking to him.
It actually looks like Roseanne Barr's in the crowd, too, but I don't think it was really her.
Do you want to touch on that one plot element that gets established in this movie?
Oh, I mean, we can. I was going to get to it later. We might as well do it now.
Yeah, Do you think it was an integral detail in the series once it was established?
No, I mean, we're going to find out because they erased it. You know what I mean? We'll find out how important it is in less than a month.
Now,
or exactly a month.
Yeah. Now, Carpenter has mentioned several times that that element was only there because it was a product of sleep deprivation and a lot of beer. But isn't that every author's excuse for a novel or story they're unsatisfied with?
Yeah, I don't know. My deal, like, it was pretty shoehorned. Like, the fact that they just had the nurse from the first one reappear basically just to tell us that Laurie was Michael's sister. It felt kind of shoehorned in.
Wait, hold on. Can you reenact that and I'll play the theme? So, for the dramatic effects so the listeners understand how major that was?
Okay. So, it really feels shoehorned in that they bring the nurse back from the first one just to be Michael Myers is Laurie Strode's brother. You have to it matters to the established timeline we have right now. I have a feeling when this new one comes out, and I'm a little afraid I'm on the hype train for this, but it's going to be so good that I'm not going to care if Laurie's not Michael's sister anymore. Mm-hmm. Although I'm wondering...
Sexual tension?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm really wondering where Michael's obsession's going to come from then. And I get his obsession in the first one. It's the first girl he saw at his house, so he immediately makes that sister connection.
Okay, so maybe his obsession is that she was the one that got away.
Yeah.
Like, and literally got away. Not in a sex way.
I'm really curious to see, especially now that I don't like 2 as much as I used to, and I'm now totally okay with it being retconned. I'm very curious to see how they handle it. I'm very excited to see how they handle it.
Do you feel like the ending of this film kind of ruined the idea that evil never dies?
If they just stopped here, maybe. Mm-hmm. But, I mean... that could also be a product of Loomis's obsession that he wasn't, I mean, yeah, he did evil stuff, but he was still a man. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Loomis was just obsessed and so unhinged at this point that this could have just been a crazy guy at this point. You know, Loomis could have been the one that was making him out to be this demon.
Do you like it that way? Because I do not, sir.
No, I don't. Because I think there is merit in some of the films down the road. If we look at it that way, we don't get those films. Mm-hmm. And I don't get to see Paul Rudd for the first time ever in my life, and I love him. Sorry, that got weird.
If you're not careful, Scott Valentine might hear you.
I think Scott will understand. I mean, have you seen Paul Rudd since he's been working out for Ant-Man? Dude is cut.
Do you think there's a special world where Paul Rudd and Scott Valentine, Frolic and Fields are the same person? That's even better.
I wonder if his name is Rudd Valentine. That's a pretty tough name, like Rock Hudson. But like Rudd Valentine.
You don't think like Scott Rudd would be pretty tough, like an action star?
No, that's too dopey. Name's Scott Rudd. Yeah, no, I don't like that. Anyway, back to the point. I also consider this movie to be where Michael Myers actually becomes Michael Myers. There's so much in this movie that we associate with Michael Myers that didn't really happen it happened a little bit in one, but not nearly as much. The whole, like, Michael comes out of the shadows. It does happen in the first one, but it happens a little more, and it's a little more nuanced in this
realistically,
one. Yeah. And we finally get one guy playing him for the entire thing, Dick Warlock, who is also the stunt director.
That name every time.
Badass. Michael, like, he plays him sneakier. He spends more times in the shadows and emerging from those shadows. It's just, when I think of Michael Myers, I think of victims slowly backing into him. And this is kind of where that starts. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He moves the way I imagine him when thinking of and talking about these movies. Like, this is the Michael I always have in my head. This is where the head tilt comes from. Mm-hmm. You know, Michael's head tilt. That's very, very, iconic. Yeah, that's very iconic, that head tilt. And they got rid of that horrible grunting he does in the original. I get it. He's a person. He's going to make noises, but that grunting when he's strangling what's-her-name in the car is awful. I don't know. I'm so torn about this. I know I said I wasn't into this movie when I watched it this week, And after all that, you may think otherwise. But it still suffers some pretty severe flaws that kind of ruin it for me.
Like the dumbest cop ever?
The dumbest cop ever. The characters, for the most part, suck and are all exceptionally unlikable. Especially Leo Rossi playing that dude is gross, from his greasy rendition of Amazing Grace to his blatant womanizer attitude. I mean, this is Illinois. There shouldn't be some douchebag from New Jersey being gross and smoking pot in the hospital cafeteria. It drives me crazy. I hate him, and I'm glad to watch him die.
Don't you mean Joycey?
Myers and Loomis are... What?
Don't you mean Joycey?
Yeah, I mean Joycey. So everyone else except for Myers and Loomis are either annoying or just wooden characters there to eventually meet their doom. They're all super boring. Laurie Strode could have saved this movie had they not just relegated her to damsel in distress and erased any and all badassery she had in the original. And this may be this movie's greatest sin. They turn badass final girl into drugged up screaming, not even screaming. There were, when she's out in the parking lot crawling around on the ground, she can't even scream. Why can't she scream? Because the plot called for it. No other good reason. Ugh.
Well, it's funny that you should mention that, because in Ebert's review of the sequel, he did express how disappointed he was, and he did say it was yet another victim of the idiot plot, in which all problems could be solved if everybody wasn't an idiot.
Exactly. I don't like movie reviewers, even though I'm kind of a movie reviewer now.
I respect what Ebert did. Usually half the time he was wildly off the mark for me, but then half the time he was spot on every detail.
I just can't take the dude who wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls seriously. The occasional addition of humor could work in a movie like this, but you've got to make sure that the jokes are good. Lance Guest is a great example here. He plays Jimmy, who spends the first half of the movie trying to hit on Laurie, who is an underage girl drugged up and in the hospital. Granted, he's chill about it, but it's still kind of gross. I'll give the film and his performance one credit.
The best death ever?
Yeah. I lose my shit laughing when he slips and falls in the head nurse's blood puddle and is essentially useless for the rest of the movie. He only shows up towards the end to debatably die of his injuries on the car's horn. There is an alternate ending where he survives, but I prefer to pretend that doesn't exist.
Like, he's such a loser that the only way he gets killed is indirectly from Michael's action. It wasn't even on purpose.
Dies of a boo-boo head.
I do love the angle of his neck, though, in that shot. It looks disturbing.
Yeah, it does. You're right. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because this is The Last Starfighter, man. Have you ever seen that movie? Dude, The Last Starfighter. It's great. It's about a kid who plays video games, and he's so good at video games that this, alien, Air Force comes down and steals him to make him, fly their plane. Or their spaceship. It's so good.
Yeah, I saw that when I was a kid.
Yeah, you should watch it again. It still holds up. Yeah, I love that movie, and I want him to be awesome in everything. And he seems like such a chill guy in the interviews I've seen as he's older, but he sucks, man. To hell with that guy in this movie. They also pronounce Samhain wrong, which I know is just a little thing, but they pronounce it Samhain, and it doesn't matter that much. But as someone who is interested in the occult and interested in stuff like that, I don't like to hear that. It's so easy to figure out how to pronounce a word.
Okay, here's what I will say about that. There are actually several different variations of the pronunciation, and none of them is actually technically wrong because of the way the word has evolved over the centuries.
I don't feel like arguing about that, so okay. But I think that a word has a pronunciation, and just because a bunch of people say it wrong for a really long time doesn't necessarily...
That's why the American accent exists, Corey.
No, I understand that, but do you accept Bay? Do you accept Lit Fam?
What's Lit Fam?
Means...
well, that's slang. That's vernacular. It's how language evolves. There's some words that I'm sure are in the common dialectic today that were originally just stupid teenagers trying to sound cool in the Middle Ages.
I don't like it, Maddy. Nothing should evolve past 1890 except technology.
If language doesn't change, it dies.
No, it doesn't. It just stays the same.
Oh, yeah? You have your Latin neighbors, down the street still speaking in that classic Roman tongue?
Yes, at the Catholic Church. Boom. What's up?
Did you drop your mic?
I did. No, this mic's expensive. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. I guess I still like this movie, just not as much as I once did. The original has once again taken the crown for the best Halloween movie. I relinquish my ridiculous comment that 2 was better. Before watching this again, I was a little disappointed that they were retconning it for the new film, but now I'm totally okay with it.
Now, if you do the math, the budget was basically over 6 times the amount of the original.
Jesus.
$2.5 million.
Oh, you know what else we need to talk about? This has to do with the budget a little bit. We do need to talk about the end, because the end is absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a little cheesy when he's blinded, when Michael's blinded and like swinging blindly at everybody. That's a little bit lame.
Oh, gosh. It's... Okay, so when did Night of the Creeps come out?
Oh, God, I don't even know.
It's that... Yes, this ending rocks. And it also reminds me of that scene with...
Detective, thrill me. Yeah, I know what you mean with Detective, like, walking out of the...
Tom Adkins. It reminds me of Tom Adkins lighting the match at the end of Night of the Creeps. And Tom Adkins is in Halloween 3.
That's Jack Death from...
Well, he's in My Bloody Valentine.
I don't remember. That doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, the burn in that, like, you've got, like, that ending is perfect. Again, except for the whole Laurie Strode being a damsel in distress that needs rescued. I hated that. Mm-hmm. But I love that, like, you've got Loomis's obsession coming to a head where he just doesn't care if he dies as long as he takes Michael with him. Mm-hmm. And you've got that whole them turning on all the gas in there and Laurie running out and this explosion, which was apparently a lot bigger than they meant it to be. Like, they didn't know the explosion was going to be that big, and, like, blew some doors off hinges, and, like, it was just ridiculous. And that stuntman, Dick Warlock, badass name, that fire. Dude actually, he burned his arms. There were zippers on his outfit that actually transferred the heat to his arms. So he got minor burns on his arms, and then did the burn for a second take. That dude is hardcore. Damn. And it looks so good, like him just walking out, falling down, the shot of the mask melting.
And the camera work is really nice. There are some truly beautiful shots. Even though it's goofy, when he slips in that blood, that's a really beautiful shot.
Isn't the sound so perfect for that too? His little sneakers squeaking.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's great.
I might have to watch that scene again before I go to bed.
Watching this kind of reminded me that there are a lot of horror sequels that always end up in hospitals. There's this one. There's Friday the 13th Part 3. There was a hospital sequence early on. Yeah, because in Part 2, the girl from Part 1 was immediately killed. Yeah, it was Part 3. I love a sequel that starts in a hospital. A horror sequel that starts in a hospital. And I want to see a short film that I might make someday where all of the killers coming back for their sequel experience or whatever converge in the same hospital on the same night.
I could get down for that.
And the twist at the end is they all die because there just so happens to be a killer nurse.
That's how they should have done Freddy versus Jason. They should have, like, the hospital that Jason's in 3 should have been the same hospital that Dream Warriors took place in. Yeah. Like the psych ward is in the same hospital. That would have been great.
Michael's chasing someone, then he walks around the corner, sees them both, and just tilts his head.
Perfect. And it all just happened to be in Haddonfield because they're all next door neighbors. All right, so Halloween 1 and 2 are in the can, ladies and gentlemen. It's downhill from here, my friends.
Up next week, Corey will be reviewing Part 3, and I will be watching for the first time and reviewing Part 4.
And I'm going to say it here. The whole reason I'm doing 3 instead of 4 and going first for, like, I think only the second time in the history of the podcast is because we made a deal that I get to do the Paul Rudd one. Whether that's 5 or 6, I forget. I get to do the Paul Rudd one because I'm doing 3. I also like 3. So, well, I think I like 3. We'll find out. I may just destroy my childhood again. All that I remember about it is the song that 8 more days till Halloween, 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 8 more days till Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
I think that's the main part everybody remembers about that movie.
Probably. I remember songs from horror movies really well. Like, you remember that Nightmare on Elm Street, the series? Did you ever watch any of that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Freddy's Nightmares.
Yeah. There was an episode of where it took place in, like, a fast food restaurant, and all I remember, the entire show, the only thing I remember is the song that the fast food restaurant jingle. It was chew me, eat me, you can't beat me, chew me, eat me, you can't beat me, over and over again.
Oh man, one of my favorite ones is one lick isn't enough. You can't get enough of the stuff.
Oh, nice. And that one's got such a good, like, 70s sort of feel to it. We got to do the stuff sometime. That movie's
we do.
good.
Yeah, it's
That
going to be a food movie.
Yeah, I was like 10 years old. Yeah, yogurt can take over your brain. And it's right there. Everybody has yogurt.
Yeah, subterranean yogurt.
Yeah, Alaskan subterranean. Isn't it like found in like Antarctica or something?
Yeah, who like goes mining and no, they're just mining and it starts pumping up from the ground and this guy was like, and he tastes it and he's like, oh, this is good.
Yeah. I probably would have done the same. I'm not very smart and I like eating stuff from the ground.
I think that's how Vaseline was discovered.
I don't know, but I ate Takis off a hotel floor the other day.
What? I feel like it's time to wrap this up.
Probably right.
So if you want to check out our blog, you can find us at Hallow-Holic.blogspot.com or Hallow-Holic.wordpress.com.
You can also find us on Twitter by searching Hallow-Holics or tweeting at Nowhere23.
You can email us at Hallow-Holics@outlook.com.
And you can find us on Podpedia searching for the portal HHA. They make us say that?
You know what? If you're not careful, Corey, I will give Jim your new phone number.
Oh, please don't do that.
I'd really appreciate it if you gave me that number.
Okay, it's 867